Welcome into the Victory Sports Network. I'm Jason Dannelly, joining you for a special coaches interview here today. It was to take an opportunity to get to know some of the NAIA coaches across the country. And we would be remiss if we didn't go to the guy that won the NAIA Football Coach of the Year Award for the Victory Sports Network from Friends University, head coach Terry Harrison. Coach Harrison, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking some time out of your spring here to talk some NAIA football.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And you love what you guys do to cover our kids. And I know our families and our university really appreciate all your coverage.
You know, it has been a heck of a lot of fun for me to kind of come back into the fold these last 2 years after doing it really for 10, 15 years and then stepping away from the public side of it. So get an opportunity to meet some coaches and maybe get to talk to some coaches that, you know, had a tie-in to the NAIA with yourself being kind of a former NAIA athlete. I had to bring this up from the 2004 NAIA preview from the Victory Sports Network. Quarterback Terry Harrison returning for his senior year in 2004. You made the magazine, Coach. How about that?
That's amazing. That was right before I got moved to tight end for not being a good enough quarterback. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I was trying to go to the Wayback Machine in my head, and I was like, okay, I remember Coach Lambert came in, and obviously Coach Lambert run style and all that, and you were quarterback and passing and not a lot on the run side. And I couldn't remember what exactly happened your senior year. So you went to tight end. I saw you had a couple touchdown catches that year, so it was, you know, wasn't like you weren't contributing. You just had to get to a different spot on the field.
Yeah, it was actually one of the better things that ever happened to me. That was kind of my introduction to offensive line play, you know, being a tight end with those guys all the time. And so that was kind of, how I got acquainted with the offensive line. And then I actually stayed the next year and coached offensive line. And then I got into the high school side of things. And so, yeah, anyway, it seems like forever ago for sure. But it was a great experience for me. And I mean, I learned a ton just through all of that for the challenges we had. And then we had a little bit of a turnaround that year. And, you know, like I said, just, good experience. And I think more than anything, you know, I think playing at this level and playing at Sterling College helps me, you know, probably more maybe than others be able to relate to our kids, what it's like. And so it, I don't know, I hope that gives me some perspective, I guess, for our kids.
No, that's a big thing I look at with, you know, when universities hire new coaches, I kind of go and I look at pedigree. You know, where did they come from? Did they come from a high school rank, college rank, JUCO rank, you know, and I gauge that based on, you know, 20, 25 years looking at this and trying to determine, all right, do I think this coach can be successful? And I look at, you know, you coming into Friends, obviously from Bethel prior to that and having some success at the high school level. But to me, I felt like the most important thing was you playing at this level. You get it. There's guys that come into this level and they think, well, you know, we're going to do things this way. And you just kind of shake your head and you go, that ain't going to work, man. Like we got budgets, you know, we got restrictions. We've only got so many scholarships. So, you know, for you to come in and have success now at two programs, I think it's been a great story for the NAIA and just kind of your own coaching history. You know, talk about this last season. Let's talk about this last season. We'll get into nostalgia. Talk about this last season and kind of the culmination, what that has been for Friends University. Get back to the playoffs and make a little run and challenge the national champion.
Yeah, it was a really special year. I mean, the reality is, you know, we I think more than anything, you know, very proud of our kids, but even more than that, I hope at least at some level, people on the national stage, maybe people outside, got to see the level of ball we play in our conference and the fact that we could go toe to toe with Grandview. And, you know, we led most of that game. And you know, I've got big shoulders, so I'll take, you know, I had a bad second half and you know, a lot of coulda, shoulda, wouldas that maybe happened in that second half. But it's kind of one of those deals. What I've told everyone, because, you know, you get the congratulatory, you know, text messages and phone calls and all that good stuff. And it was kind of both frustrating, you know, because we felt like maybe we could have won that game, or in a lot of ways we should have. But then also exciting, which means, hey, we can do this, you know. And I think, you know, so much of success at the national level is the idea of belief and the fact that you can see, hey, we belong here. And so that was big for our program. But no, like you mentioned, this was our third fall here at Friends. Our first year, you know, we were 4-7 in 2022. We could kind of see behind the scenes that, hey, we're going to have an opportunity to be here to be, you know, I don't know if elite or whatever you want to use, but hopefully an elite program at the national level. And then, you know, the year before we were 9-2, you know, a lot of people think maybe we got snubbed out of the playoffs, whatever that means, but missed the playoffs. And that was our own doing, you know, and then we knew we had so many returners and, you know, quite honestly, Friends, for people that have never been down to Wichita or been around, you know, Friends has always been the job, or at least on the coach's side of things. When I was at Bethel at the high school level, it's kind of one of those jobs like, how are they not really good? And if you haven't been here and haven't been around NAIA football, man, it's just a very unique experience being in downtown Wichita. And, it does feel like maybe a bigger school than it is. And so you get the private Christian college experience, but so many outside opportunities, in the community and all that good stuff. And so, we really love here. It's kind of been, in the back burner of my mind, maybe a dream job for a long time, even when I was coaching in Wichita here at the high school level. And so the fact that it's been able to kind of come to fruition and some of the vision and dreams we had for this place, to see that, and then to know that, we for the foreseeable future, we're going to be very competitive now. Wins and losses come and go. And, certainly I'm not naive to think we're going to win every game for the next 10 years, but we're going to be very competitive, and every Saturday have an opportunity to win. And we hope even moving in deeper runs in the playoffs.
Well, I know one thing that has been said through the years, and it has come to fruition in the past, and it has come to fruition with you. A lot of guys, when they looked at that Friends job, when it came open, they go, man, if the right guy gets in there, they can do really well. And Monty Lewis, had that run. You have obviously had a nice run here too. And hopefully that continues for the sake of your program. And I just look at the conference that you're in, and it's so different than many of the other teams in the conference because you've got a major metro that you're recruiting to, but it's not such a major metro where that kid from outstate Western Kansas, outstate Oklahoma is going to look at it and go, oh, wow, I can't be around there. It's really got a great feel to the campus, and it's been years since I've physically have been there, but you truly do feel like you're still at a small college. You just happen to have this metro around you.
Right. Very similar. So we, playing up in Grandview, honestly, very similar, like being in Des Moines there, it's got a very similar. So people that are familiar with Grandview, Wichita and Friends University has a very similar feel as far as in the community, the setup and all that good stuff. So yeah, that was kind of a, part of the vision for this place. It gives you hope if they can do it, at Grandview. I think certainly we can achieve some of those same goals for sure.
Unfortunately, some of my experience with Wichita outside of the world of football is taking the interstate through town. And I don't know if they've changed this, but when they kick it down to like 55 miles an hour and I have out-of-state plates. So I've contributed to the Kansas General Fund a couple times, unfortunately. So
for sure.
It happens. So talking a little bit about your program, and you came off this banner year, you're heading into spring, you've got some key returners back. And as a Nebraska native myself, now living in North Dakota, I grew up in the 80s and 90s watching option football. And I just look at your system and a guy like Cavante Baker, and I'm just taken back. I'm like, we're running some option football. We're running the ball all the time. We're going to run to win. Talk a little bit about Cavante and what the spring prognosis is on the offensive side.
Yeah, we bring a ton of guys back. Our offensive line, for the most part, all comes back. We gain a couple of kids that transferred over with us from Bethel to be eligible, so that were dynamic football players for us there. So we're extremely deep, maybe the deepest offensive line we would have ever had as far as, top down 1 to 3 or 4, whatever that looks like. But yeah, we bring a ton of guys back. Elias Pino, who's one of the most explosive players in the conference. We actually didn't have him against Grandview because he was out with a shoulder injury, and that really kind of stung at times. We could have used his big playability, but yeah, we bring everybody back and just continuing to focus on some details. And, like you mentioned, we do run the flex bone. And I think for a lot of reasons, people misunderstand that. And sometimes, anytime you hear people talk about it as 3 yards in a cloud of dust or whatever, but the reality is, over the last 2 years, we've averaged 42 points a game. We average 7.6 yards a play. And so it's kind of funny sometimes, if we were just doing shotgun snaps, people might list us as one of the most explosive offenses in the country, but people that aren't familiar say 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But I can assure you, we score a lot of points, and there's nothing 3 yards in a cloud of dust about us. And that's because of our players. We have kids that can score from anywhere on the field, and so yeah, we've been elite. Last year we think we only had 6 games where our starters played the second half. So we took a little bit of dip nationally on the offensive ratings. We always in the top 3 or 4 in scoring, but we're just very intentional about, we don't want to be just good right now. We want to develop our program for the future. And so, a lot of those games and scoring 42 points a game were some of our younger guys, getting the opportunity to play. And we think that's going to, just continue to play off as we continue to build this thing.
One of the other reasons why you guys are so good, and I think your offense gets a lot of the accolades because of running the football, leading the country by 1,000,000 yards in total rushing yards. But one of the reasons why you're so good, and with this style of offense, you have to have a great defense. And you go through and you look at how your defense contributed throughout the year. Talk about those guys, what you got coming back this spring.
Yeah, again, a situation where we're bringing almost all of our players back. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but no, in the playoffs specifically, our defense was phenomenal. Man, they gave Alto Arizona fits. Man, the sacks, tackles for lost turnovers, and really the best defensive effort against Grandview that they faced the entire season, and just showed that we do a phenomenal job. We're a unique defense. We do some kind of unconventional things by design, and a lot of that is to get pressure on quarterbacks. And we were able to get some shots on Jackson Waring there against that game, and missed an opportunity to pick six there in the second half, and they capitalized, right, which is the game of football. But our defense, man, they're phenomenal football players, an aggressive style, which our kids love and they know really well. And just like it's hard to prepare for us on offense, it is equally as challenging to get prepared for our defense. And I know, we hear that a ton from coaches, how much it's not a very fun week, and that's by design.
You mentioned it there, and I just always like to get other people's opinions. Jackson Waring, Grandview University, NAIA Player of the Year. You played against him. What were your thoughts when you were going into the game, and what were your thoughts after you came out of the game with him?
Well, yeah, going into the game, we're obviously impressed, and you see that kid on film, and I think he's a physically impressive kid, just big, thick legs. You can tell, he really takes pride and take care of his body, all that good stuff. I was really impressed with he kept his composure. A lot of times when you get the amount of shots on a quarterback that we got on him, and he hadn't been sacked much during the year and hadn't had a ton of pressure put on him. But he was just really impressive that he was able to handle that, and he stayed in there and he kept battling. And I think it just proves, he's clearly a winner and did a great job of leading their program. And we wish we'd have got a couple more shots on him there, right, or maybe landed a couple or got that interception we had a shot for. But very impressed with their program and playing teams like that. I love that. I mean, that game, although frustrating to lose, especially in a playoff environment, that will only make our program better. And I'm all for that. My career coaching, man, we went and played West Texas A&M. We played Mid-America Nazarene on a COVID year on a short week. We played Texas College. We have taken non-conference games anywhere we've ever been. And so unfortunately now our conference is closed and we can't do that. And so playoff games for us just give that opportunity, just like playing Alto Arizona, man. It was so good for us. And I think it makes you better when you play really good teams. And I mean, I'd go play Alabama if they'd let us, but unfortunately, we can't do that.
Well, Kalen's a former NAI guy. Maybe you shoot him a text. Hey, you want to play Friends, and he would go, "Wow, that's really good for Friends. Probably not so good for our image on this side." And NAI is cool. Yeah, we'll see what we can do on that. So, and the thing I look at, and Grandview is a great example of this. So Grandview had a really great season a year ago, 2023, and then lost in the playoffs to College of Idaho. And watching how they lose that game, you kind of said, those guys are going to figure that out now. I see the same thing with your squad this year. You go and you really battle hard against a great football team, but you end up losing. What were some specific lessons that maybe you learned in that game and the Ottawa game that you see where, all right, we were pretty good in the KCAC. Now this is what we got to do to elevate ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of it is just playing with an aggressive style late. We're very aggressive, and I think you have to get in that moment, and maybe we got a little conservative in the second half when we shouldn't have, because we were protecting the lead, and maybe like you talked about, we maybe were a little more traditional, let the clock run down and try to get out of this thing, and that's just not our style, and we don't need to do that. We need to keep our aggressive mindset, throughout the game. But I think the best part for our kids is, it's so funny. And again, part of I coach the offensive side of the ball. So for me, nothing that failed us in the second half was a play call or not having enough this or not throwing the ball enough. It was all execution things. We had a touchdown pass called back because we flinched at the offensive line and jumped offside. So we lost points there, which would have put us up two scores. And then just some little details of guys not taking the right step or this or that. And so it's really encouraging when you can show your kids film and say, hey, we don't need to change our scheme. We don't need to change who we are. We've got to execute in the big moments. And so there's definitely some mental performance lessons we've taken there. And so that's been our big focus, this spring, is simply, the mental performance side of things. And so we work really hard at that, and we do little things every day to build our mental performance. And so it's cool. So right, like again, the idea of encouraging and frustrating, right? There was no major overhaul that caused us to lose that game. It was minor details, which, when you get to that level and you play really good teams, it always comes down to small things and execution.
So you've been on both sides of it now. When it comes to the NAIA postseason, you were one of the first teams left out 2 years ago. You made the postseason this year. There's obviously been changes from what the NAIA postseason previously was in a 16-team field. Just broad shot at it. I mean, what are your thoughts on the NAIA postseason now? And is there anything you'd like to be able to see that could maybe enhance play or enhance the selection process as a coach?
Well, it's really hard, and so anything I'm saying is straight off the cuff, and I understand that it is a very complex process. It's really hard.
Before you say anything, Coach, if he says anything disparaging here that may get him in trouble, he didn't mean it. I baited him into the question.
Well, I've always been, look, the reality is there's automatic qualifiers. And so one of the things that we say here when we feel like we missed it in 2023, we missed it, we were likely the first team out or something like that. We always say, look, the reality is if you're not good enough to win your automatic qualifier, it's not your year to win a national championship. And so we say, hey, you've got to take care of business. And so you can't be a sore loser. You got to understand, you got to own the fact that we've got to do what we need to do to make it. That's why when Ottawa made it at 6-5, we had beat them by like 3 touchdowns last year. That is not their fault. That was our fault for not taking care of our own. And so we're the biggest proponent of, you have very clear rules on how to be an automatic qualifier. You need to do that. And if you don't do that, can't have sour grapes when you don't make it. Having said that, I don't love the coaches selecting who makes it. I don't know that there's a better way necessarily, but inevitably, if you're a Raider or on the selection committee and I'm not, and we're both on the bubble, it sure seems like a lot of times, maybe those teams make it. And then I would say, the idea of, let's use the Heart of America, for instance, right? They do get a lot of benefit and credit in national rankings, it seems like every year. The reality is our conference, the KCAC, has a winning record against the Heart of America in head-to-head matchups in the last 5, 6, 7 years, since 2018.
Yep.
But it doesn't feel like we always get credit for that at ARC ratings. For instance, this year, we were coming off a 9-2 season when we lost 2 games by less than a touchdown. And in the ARC and in the coaches poll, we were underneath 3 Heart teams in the same division the whole year. And it just at times seems like it's hard to justify. And again, I'm not on those committees. I have no access to that. It just does. I'll say this, and this will be my last thing. When I started coaching college football in 2018, had no idea how this thing worked. Well, in 2019, we were 8-3. And in 2020, we were 9-2, and we were still having a hard time at Bethel getting in the top 20. And so we were told at the time, when we kind of would question how are the coaches ready to go, well, we just need to have some long-term success. Okay, so then you have long-term success, but then you still maybe don't get the benefit of the doubt, and you wonder, the reality is if you look at our coaching staff, which we've had the same staff at Bethel and here now, outside of our first seasons at schools, 4-7, 3-8 in Bethel, we win 9 and 10 games a year, but then at times we're on the bubble against teams that maybe are more recent. And so that's I think every coach feels that. And the guys I talk to, I just think the hardest thing is the path for a new program that's just now having success. Sometimes it seems like it's hard to make the jump from a bubble team to a top 15 team. And I think those guys, which I've been on both now, it makes you wonder, well, what else can I do to get an opportunity? And then when we go have success in the postseason, will we get credit for that next year or not? That's my question. So the fact that we are Grandview's most competitive game, we led 75% of that game and arguably could have, should have won, and we did not. Will we get credit for that or not? Because it feels like sometimes programs do.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in your case, you will this year, but I very much echo the sentiments of what you're saying because I see it on my side too. And I think some of the problems, and this isn't me trying to toot my own horn here, but there's very few people that are not coaches or athletic directors at the NAIA level dedicated to following this level. There's myself and a few others that do it. And even in some of those cases, you kind of get some regional bias that goes into it. And that's why since I came back, one of the things that I said I want to do is like, listen, I'm in Fargo, North Dakota. The closest NAIA school to me is probably an hour away from here roughly. But I have no ties there. I don't have an alma mater in the NAIA anymore. They closed in 2010. So I want to try to be as national, have as much of a national perspective as possible. And I feel like we lack that sometimes, when we lose coaches to a Division II level or a Division I level, or a coach retires, or an athletic director that's been around for a while and has seen it kind of retires. And so every 4 to 5 years, we kind of have a new crop that comes in, and maybe it's not fair to kind of take things a step back and just look at this season for what this season is. And that's what I ultimately try to do. Sometimes I'm not good at it, and sometimes I was wrong. Like for the probably half of the season, I didn't give the respect to the KCAC that I probably should have, because I was still trying to fill out, okay, where are we at? Like we kind of thought these teams were going to be good, but then it's actually these teams, and we've had a close game. So just sometimes it takes time. But like you, I am glad we have made the change in the postseason where every conference champion is making it. We know that, whether they're 5-5, 6-5, 10-0, whatever it is, they're making it. And then, the debate now becomes those spots 13 through 20, as opposed to, now you've got teams that went 9-1 in a season or 9-2 in a season and won their conference, but they have to be rated number 21 and they're not making it in. So I don't know where I was going with that point, Terry, but I guess I've said.
Well, I think what you said is exactly right, and it's so hard. Like I said, for me, we are not. If we're good at anything here, we don't blame and complain and all that good stuff. We embrace where we're at, and if we weren't quite good enough, that's totally okay. But I do, I love the fact that 2 Sooner teams made it this year. Ottawa had an opportunity, right, and to go, and the same for us. And I think until. I guess I just don't know how to put it. You don't want it to be like the ins and out club or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, people call it the good old boy system. It's not that, but it's, you should not get credit for 10 years ago winning a national championship at some level. And that's hard because you do have respect for programs. That's the thing. Like, you want to respect programs or tradition, but there does have to be an element of, and you want to be and value your own conference, but you have to understand, like, it's a snapshot of today. And there's a chance if maybe there had been a better job of that, or maybe a better system in any way, there's a chance there are teams that could have won playoff games that never got an opportunity. And I know that you can make an argument on both sides of that, but I'm all for, more teams getting an opportunity to play in the playoffs, which we have now. And then I think the biggest thing, and I'll tell you this, Jason, this is the last thing. If you look at, so let's use the KCAC because that's my experience, right? But you could, people say, well, no one's won a KCAC game and playoff game in the last 20 years or 30 years or whatever. But it would be interesting to know if KCAC teams hosted every playoff game for 7 years in Wichita and people had to get on flights and play us every round, we would win a lot of those games. And so there's been this weird deal of there are teams that have hosted playoff games for 7 straight years until the national title game. And then you complain that this team makes it and they can't get beat. Well, 95% of games are won by the home playoff game or playoff team. So you almost get, it's the irony of the whole situation. Like I love, you should have to travel. I mean, I don't know, at the high school level, we knew if you're going to win a playoff game, you had to travel at least one round. You could not host all the way through. And I'm not proposing that, nor I'm not on any committee to propose that, by the way, so people don't freak out. But it is interesting, you get, if you're trying to make it like us, if you're trying to make a splash on the national level, are good teams that have been, whoever that team is, but the cards are kind of stacked against you, and you got to be even better than you would have had to be if you hosted. And so that's a huge challenge. And I don't know if the playoff committees can, ever thinks about that, but sometimes it sure feels like, well, it must be nice to host playoff game for 10 years and win them all, because you have an inherent advantage. It is literally the biggest home field advantage in all of college football. So anyway. Yeah,
I'm with you. I've seen it where, you kind of, when I do my predictions, I go through and I'm like, okay, home teams. And you go do the predictions, and then you go back and you look and go, okay, do any of these road teams have a shot? And there's a couple sometimes you look at. And I think another, we jump out of the KCAC, a team that has kind of seen that same sort of thing was Dickinson State. I know Dickinson State for years made the playoffs, and everybody said, how do they keep making the playoffs out of this, quote, weak conference? And they always lose in the postseason. Well, guess what? They finally won a road game 2 years ago against a rated team, and they hosted this year and they won. Well, guess what? They were hosting. That certainly helps in that game. So.
Well, and I know the coaches I talked to, I do know that. And again, it is all good, but I know from the personal conversation with the coaches, the whole like ARC ranking and top 10 and who's hosting is definitely a big frustrating point for a lot of coaches for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But we, getting out of the weeds of the I don't want to say NAIA policy and handbook and all that sort of stuff. Talking a little bit more about, Friends University, let's talk about your move from Bethel to Friends. You were successful, as you just mentioned, at Bethel, 9-win seasons, just out of the postseason. And then the Friends job comes open. There's not a whole lot of distance really between North Newton and Wichita.
Yeah.
You had coached high school football in Wichita. What was that moment where you went, I think I want to go for that Friends job?
Yeah, well, number one, it was really hard to leave Bethel. We had a lot of really good players. We had built an awesome culture there, and we won back-to-back conference championships and made a playoff. Had won a playoff game. Played a playoff game there against Lindsey Wilson when they won a national title. But anyway, it was really hard to leave. But the reality is, Friends actually was closer to my house, so it's the only college job closer to my home where I live. We've never moved. I'm a coaching unicorn. I've had the same house and 4 different jobs. But anyway, yeah. It was that, but then honestly, a lot of it was back to my playing experience at Sterling. So when I was a player at Sterling, we'd be at Friends and wonder how are they not, it's just a different experience than living in Sterling, Kansas. Okay. And so there's that. So there was always in the back of my mind, Friends seemed to have some advantages that maybe or resources, a better way to put it, that other people didn't. And then as a high school coach in Wichita, I was a high school coach when Friends, they were still winning conference championships, but then they had a little bit of a dip, and struggled. And it was just always that we'd sit around after high school games and check the scores and be like, man, how are they struggling so bad? And so it's always in the back of my mind, it's been the job. And I know other coaches in our conference, when we would talk before games and Friends was struggling, we'd always be like, man, whoever gets that job, we knew it could be a diamond in the rough. So anyway, so that was kind of the deal. And then when it came open, I just happened to have a relationship with our athletic director, Dr. Rob Ramsire. The assistant athletic directors here actually had coached high school football in Wichita. So there were just a lot of connecting points there, and it being closer to my house. And then when I met President Carey, it was, just a no-brainer, just a fit, the mission of the school, just alignment from president to athletic director to football. It just was a no-brainer. And then, there's so many high schools here. We're 10 minutes away from, 400 prospects a year. I mean, it's just, the recruiting idea is just so much. It's so much easier. The airport's 3 miles from our campus. There's just a lot of recruiting things here that made the right school. And then the fact that kids here, the employment opportunities when they graduate, right? So the return on their investment in their education. And so it's a no-brainer. And quite honestly, it has been everything we thought it would be as far as, just such a great opportunity for kids and families.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. And like you said, you are coaching unicorn. I hear more stories about, guys having to move. And eventually the family would just kind of say, we love coaching, but we can't take another move. We like our community. We like where you're at. For you to be able to maintain the same residence all these years and have several different coaching jobs, that's there's a lot of coaches out there jealous of you right now.
Yeah, I'm always scared to say that. I might get some hate mail on that one. Like, I don't know what it's really like. So we've been very fortunate as a family for sure.
But, and this is of no ill will, I look back at your playing career, and it's not like you spent your time in Wichita. You were in Sterling, Kansas, which I've been to. I've attended games there. It is a vastly different culture between the two. How did you get to Sterling to play football back in the day? Other than driving a car there, obviously. Yeah,
well, long story short, this was pre-cell phone days. I was right before everyone having a cell phone and all that good stuff. And, it was just I was going to join the Army. My whole family's been in the Army, a military kid, all that good stuff. And the coach at the time just kept calling. And finally in July, my mom was like, hey, just go see the place, and it was kind of the whole idea of you can always join the Army, that conversation that parents have with their kids. And so anyway, and all that stuff, fun stuff for my family dynamics. But anyway, visited in July, which was like 3 weeks before camp started. And it was kind of the old deal, like I guess I didn't know what I was getting into or what I was doing, but I loved football and thought maybe, hey, I could always join the Army. And so anyway, go, and then the story, right? Show up 3 weeks later, make the best friends of my life. And I was a 4-year guy there. I met my wife there. She was 2 years, but she was a freshman when I was a junior. She was an All-American basketball player there. And yeah, it's just been phenomenal. And one of those deals, that, it's worked out for me. And like I said, just great friends, great opportunity. I learned a ton. We were not very good, really struggled. And then had a little bit of turnaround my senior year and all that good stuff. But it was great for me and one of the best decisions I ever made, even though, there's certainly challenges for sure.
And I know back then, again, I'm going to the Wayback Machine in my head here, but I know Andy Lambert was a little more of a run style football offense, obviously. How much of your current offense do you kind of take from those early days, with Sterling and Coach Lambert bringing in that style of offense?
Well, that was probably my first introduction to it, and then playing tight end was basically offensive line. I really enjoyed it, and I loved the physicality of it. That kind of fit my personality. I spoke at the high school clinic. It's not like we can't. I mean, I've been coaching a long time, and I was coaching at the Kansas high school clinic. I spoke right before the K-State guy and KU guy, and I was kind of making some jokes. But it's not like we can't draw up spread plays and we don't know all that stuff. We're not morons here. We choose the style of play because we think it gives a chance to win. But we like it to hurt a little bit when we play. You know what I mean? And we're going to be in your face, and we're going to be aggressive, and we want you to feel it when we play more than just win. We want you to know that we're a very physical team. And so that was my introduction to that. But no, looking back, football's changed a ton over the last. I think I was done playing 20 years ago. Just things we wish we'd have done. We might have won a couple more games, right? Some of the stuff we do now, but at least we did line up in the same formation. And so, outside of that, it was good for me. And like I said, I was happy to finish my year, my playing career, with at least winning 5 or 6 games or whatever it was that last year.
So if your wife was an All-American at Sterling, that means she would have played for Lonnie Cruz. Was he the head coach there? Okay.
He was.
It's going back into the Wayback Machine when I used to cover NAIA women's basketball, men's basketball, and all that. Yeah. So
she was an All-American there. I think 2 times. She got hurt her senior year, but we you know how it is with basketball. When we were engaged, we were married her senior year. So I was teaching and coaching, and we were married. She changed her name as a senior. But I think I had Thanksgiving at Coach Cruz's house that year, and he was just, man, what a great man and a great leader. And my wife, absolutely loved him, and she loved her experience. That was about the only thing Sterling was good at that time was women's basketball.
Yeah, for a long time. It really was. It really was. But, it's just like anything, and yourself at Friends University there, you get a couple programs going and you get that inner competition. Hey, everybody's always talking about the baseball program, how good they are. Why can't we be that way with the football program, the women's basketball program? And I think that's why you look at some of these universities at the NAIA level, Grandview being one, Indiana Wesleyan being another, that just their programs from the bottom up kind of rise to the occasion because they want to be competitive. They don't want to be the one not winning. And I think you've started to see some of that same sort of success with Friends University there as well.
Yeah, I think they just men's wrestling coach just was named coach of the year. Men's basketball has had a resurgence. Women's basketball has been extremely competitive, made a national tournament appearance. I think our softball team has made a national tournament. Our baseball team's good. We have very competitive people, and it's fun, right? It's an encouraging environment. Everybody's pulling for each other, and success does breed success. That's the reality. And I think sometimes if you can get a program going and you can win, it's just the idea of, hey, we can do it, and I think at the conference level, the same idea, like us and Southwestern winning a playoff game this year, it's only going to make our conference better because other programs in your conference benefit from seeing like, hey, if they can do it, there's no reason we can't, or whatever that might look like. And I think the same thing happens within athletic departments that happens at the conference level for sure.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today, getting us talking about NAIA football again. I'm fired up. I don't want to go to do my actual job, but I probably should. That pays the bills. This certainly does not. So, Coach, I do appreciate you coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your coverage. Like I said, on behalf of our families, thank you for everything you do. It just makes a big-time experience for our kids for sure.